think the winner in all of this is going to be the guest, whether they're corporate travelers or leisure travelers. There's many more options for them to choose how and where they stay, whether you're, a brand new traveler right out of college, or whether you're what I call the graying nomad, which is, a version of a senior that is still semi-working, doesn't want to own two places, but wants to get around, but they want to have some predictability to that, as I said.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Lee Curtis. He's the CEO and founder at RESIDE. Lee, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Kelsey. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to have you today. So, why don't you start? Tell me a little bit about yourself, Lee.
Yeah, introduced me. So, I'm the CEO of RESIDE. We're headquartered out of Seattle, Washington. I'm at this point, I'm an industry veteran. I've been doing this for 30 years. We started out in Michigan doing this in a small corporate housing company called Village Suites, and I've had a long career, in this industry, and it's kind of cumulated into the founding of RESIDE back in 2017, and taking a company formerly known as Aboda and redeveloping it into a national operating platform, and then further developing what we call our property tech now, 360, which is I'm also the CEO of that branch as well. So we actually are to a point where we have two different companies, both servicing similar clients, but one doing it more through a marketplace technology globally, and one doing it more here nationally through traditional means.
Interesting. Tell me, I think that's fascinating that you've been able to, grow the company that way. Tell me a little bit more about RESIDE, and then we'll dig into the other side as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, RESIDE, at its core, is matter of fact, we just celebrated 35 years last week out in Seattle. So it was the original company Aboda was founded out of the original needs of Microsoft's intern program, which I think back 35 years ago, long before me, was maybe 15 or 20 interns. And last weekend, we moved in over 1,000 of them for the summer. So, which is a big all hands on deck situation, but it really shows kind of the strength and depth of our capabilities in the Seattle market, where we've been, a dominant, housing company for the 35 years, and also a 35-year partnership with Microsoft and others, which we were very, very proud of, and has helped us to really solidify ourselves in that region. So that's at the end of the day, what we do out there is provide fully furnished corporate apartments for anything from interns to senior executives, different price points, different quality points, different geographies throughout the Puget Sound region. We also operate a number of buildings across the country in various markets that provide very similar services. And that's what I call fundamentally the RESIDE business model.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong, one of the taglines for RESIDE is that, people deserve to feel at home, right?
They deserve to be at home even when they're not. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And talk to me, why is it so important that you're able to provide people this sense of home, in their daily life?
Well, at our core, we're a hospitality company. That's what we are. But it's different. If you travel, you can go into some place for a day or two or three, and it's just you may not even unpack your bags. But when you're in our segment of the hospitality industry, these are moves, projects, different types of traveling options that transcend 30 plus days. Our average length of stay is close to 70 days. So you're at that point, you're living somewhere. And the idea of home is a key component to how we design our product, how we service the product, right? It should be a very comfortable, convenient, but equally predictable experience, right? The thing about home is when you come home, you know what to expect, right? You take your armor off, you put your feet up, right? You come into your enclave, so to speak, and and it's a different type of stay than a hotel stay. So while certain components of it are very similar, right? You want to have, I mean, at your home, you got a good bed, right? Because you're going to make sure it's right. At home, you're going to have a great shower because you wouldn't live any other way. At home, you have a predictability of even the simplest things like your internet, right? And those things, the longer you're staying somewhere, the more important those things become. So the idea of home and everyone deserves to be home when they're not is kind of what was that whole idea was born out of that belief.
I think that's fantastic. And, talking about growth, really what our podcast is centered upon, you were able to take Reside and build out Reside 360, correct?
That's correct.
Tell me more about, Reside 360.
Yeah. I mean, that's, it's an idea born. That's again, as the gray bearded guy on the call. I mean, I've been doing this a while. So in one of my other companies, we had some early success with some, what I'd call early marketplace technology, but certainly the first. This goes back to 04, 05, and we developed some technology again at a previous company, and we saw this movement toward companies wanting to have one point of contact for utilizing similar services, not just nationally but globally. The old days, and even, I mean, if you even go back in hotels, pre-OTAs or online travel agencies, people would hunt and peck for what they needed all around the world, and they did it through travel companies. And then the OTAs came around, Expedia, Orbitz, and it made it easier for people to find things. Our industry never hasn't really fully been into those platforms, but you saw the rise of Airbnb, right? You saw even as I'm going to jump forward and go backwards, but even through the pandemic, you saw a lot of interest in both business and leisure folks looking for extended travel options that were not hotels. And again, I always say that there's nothing wrong with a hotel. Everything has its place, right? A 5-star has its place, so does a 1-star, right? And extended stay hotels have their place, but they're not fully furnished alternative accommodations or corporate apartments. So early days, I saw the success of it when we founded Reside in 2017. And again, that was through the acquisition of Aboda, right? So I saw, a very solid, entrenched, company that was servicing at the highest level global clients in Seattle. Again, we were the dominant and still are the dominant company in Seattle. So you can, the names obviously make, you know who they are. And, but we were only doing their services there in the Seattle region, the Puget Sound market. And, they had a desire, as we did, to grow our services with them, and the 360 product grew out of this, the initial idea of creating an aggregated marketplace, but doing it differently, right? Because I think the thing that you see mostly with aggregators and platforms, even in our industry, is it's all about choice and price, right? Which is fine, but we think there's more to it. Again, one of the elements of everyone deserves to feel home even when they're not is the implied safetiness of it, right? And while you can't guarantee safety, you can make things safer, right? And what we have done with our platform. So our platform has over 1 million options in it. We're in every country, every major country and city in the world through a very sophisticated supply chain that we've built out over 5 years. So, but further to that, we've added in layers of compliance and vetting through third-party tech platforms that allow us to continually monitor the behaviors of each one of those companies that we have. So we're not working with individual hosts. We only work with bona fide companies that are registered, and they have to register through our platform. They then go through the process of being compliance checked, and that compliance can go everything from from corporate compliance, third party compliance, trade compliance, sanction compliance. Which, think about today's world and why would sanction compliance be important? Well, you don't want to be the company accidentally doing business with an oligarch right now, right? But you could if you didn't know, right? Because they're everywhere and they have their money everywhere, and suddenly the thing that you're doing, the mobility movement that you're doing for your client is now at risk not just for you, but for the client, with inverse penalties and sanctions the other way, right? I mean, some of these, one bad transaction in the wrong in the wrong country or with the wrong, company could be a $250,000 fine, per transaction, and that's just one side door that can. So we feel it's our job to present, a much more complete offering than just price and location. We think compliance and anything, around it is super important to protect the companies we work with. And then we've also added in a whole other layer with a company called GeoShore, which allows for by zip code and address. It allows for us to have an ongoing check of safety parameters in any given area, and it gets a safety rating. So when you go into our site and go to book something, you'll get a safety rating by area on 7 different categories, everything from LBGT safety to women's safety, after dark safety, crime statistics, COVID. All these things kind of blend into a safety score. So when you go to book, you have a sense of how safe an area is, right? And again, it becomes your decision, but at least and in today's world, we joke at the company sometimes. We'll say, why wonder when you can know, right? I wonder if it's safe. Well, how about it's safe or it's not? And we've built tools to enhance this idea of extended travel. And again, you're not going in and out in 3 days and maybe it doesn't matter, right? You're going in for 30, 60 days and it does matter and it should matter.
I think that's a very important aspect that not a lot of people may understand the impact of having scores like that. I think you made a comment, and I'm curious to kind of explore that a little bit more about Airbnb. I imagine that really put a spotlight and kind of changed, the industry. Am I right in thinking that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not a contrarian by any stretch, and I've always embraced anything that brings more to the conversation, right? I mean, in the early days of my industry, when extended stay hotels came out, it was, everyone ran around, oh my God, we're going out of business. They're going to put us out of business. And, and what it ended up doing, extended stays filled a gap, right? Ours always was a different gap. It's a different style of stay. And ironically, we, as Reside in 360, on behalf of our clients, book a lot of extended stay hotels, whether it's in remote areas that there are no options, or whether it's just temporarily moving them from point A to point B. They have their use. Airbnb comes around, and the idea of a deep marketplace becomes really interesting. But yeah, there's always going to be an element to the Airbnb transaction, because you're really, it was meant to be a leisure-based site. And if you go back to its very beginning, I think it was couch surfing. Was it? So you're renting out couches,
Yeah.
right? And then it moved into the bizarre, the weird, and then it became more mainstream. And it just kept picking up steam. And I think what it really demonstrated is people are looking for something different, right? I mean, people are looking for experience. People are, they're looking to feel like they're at home, right? And all these things kind of, I think, blended together. And then COVID happened, and we had a global pandemic. And then everyone was trying to find a place to escape to. Think about the millions of people stuck in a 800 square foot apartment in Manhattan, right? And they had the means to do different, and a lot of them either moved out or temporarily moved out. But it really kicked off, I think, that next level of growth and acceptance, and it also gave everybody a test drive on something that they probably didn't understand and didn't know existed. And even leading up to the pandemic, Kelsey, I'd tell you that I was having early conversations with clients where the younger travelers were actually pushing for the Airbnb experience ahead of the pack, right? They wanted to be out of a hotel. They wanted to have a different experience. The problem was the corporates understand that there's a risk to that, right? These are not, it's not as simple as just picking something and having it be exactly as it appears, right? And Airbnb's done a ton of damage control to try to fix it and model it. And they've even tried Airbnb for business, and they've all, they understand there's a tolerance to what anyone will, what anyone will accept, right? I mean, I used to say all the time, the apartment you rent with your wife or, spouse in Paris for the weekend is a very different one than you want on Monday morning when you have to put on a suit and go to the office, right? And because your tolerance changes, right? One's cute and fun, and the other one becomes, the same apartment becomes kind of a problem for you, right? And our view of it was, okay, let's take all that and start to distill it into how can we deliver a very similar experience, but put some guardrails on it so that you know what you're getting, you can be comfortable with what you're getting, and you can, it has that, again, that predictability built into it, which is, at the end of the day, that's the whole idea of branding and, running good companies is, when it doesn't matter what you get, if you're ordering it, you expect it to be what you expect, right? And you expect it to be that way the next time and the next time. And, again, Airbnb did a great job of highlighting, the idea of furnished apartments, the idea of different styles of, what I would call alternative accommodations. And, I think it's, certainly its market cap would demonstrate that the world gets it. It's certainly put it's rung the bell in terms of what the other brands think. I mean, you're starting to see, I think Marriott announced they already had hotels and villas, or homes and villas, excuse me. Now they're moving into apartments by Bonvoy. You're seeing Hyatt talk about it again. You're hearing Hilton just announced H3. They're all, all the big brands are looking at this, what Airbnb has done, and trying to find a way to model it so that they can keep brand loyalty, within their what they would call it, within their flag.
Yeah, I think, you raised a lot of really great points talking about, the expansion of Airbnb, how it is highlighting, and the push, like you said, generationally, how people were looking for, that home away from home, even when, they're not home, right? I think that's fantastic. Lee, this has been a great conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about the industry, about Reside, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I mean, I think, we've hit some great points, but I would say, the industry is blurring. There's a blurring happening now, right? I think, as that blurring happens, it's going to create new opportunities, not just for companies, but I think the winner in all of this is going to be the guest, whether they're corporate travelers or leisure travelers. There's many more options for them to choose how and where they stay, whether you're, a brand new traveler right out of college, or whether you're what I call the graying nomad, which is, a version of a senior that is still semi-working, doesn't want to own two places, but wants to get around, but they want to have some predictability to that, as I said. And I think the winner is the traveler. And, we're really excited to be part of it. We're leading the way in terms of how it's done. And we're really, really bullish about where the future takes us.
I think that's fantastic. Well, Lee, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you, breaking down your insights on the industry, the changes you've seen, in your experience. I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you.